So I might get the award for most inconsistent YouTuber ever. But hey, let me just be real. Homegirl is a whole adult, and adulthood sometimes gets in the way of stuff you want to do. And I am a responsible adult, so I handled my responsibilities, and now I can get back to my hobby of making YouTube videos. But there have been a lot of views. Views actually went up while I was on my little unofficial hiatus. So I want to thank everyone. I mean, my channel is still only this big in terms of YouTube, but the fact that anyone would want to come and have a view and take a listen and interact, I really appreciate it. And the contest is still on. I'm not joking. When we get to the 500 number, that magic number across the social media I've mentioned more times than I care to repeat, 3 nerdy prizes to represent the 3 platforms, the Twitters, the Instagrams, and the YouTube. So I obviously have tons of nerdy stuff, so I'd love to reward 3 fellow nerds for their awesomeness and loyalty. But thank you all who kept watching through all of my hiatusing. Hey friends, it's me, the Ebony Otaku, the well-rounded nerd. So, now that I'm back to making videos, I've been thinking about it for a while. There's so much that I've watched, so much that I've read. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to make a video every day for like the next 2 months to catch up on anything. Things that I want to talk about. All of Us Are Dead. Oh my goodness, if you've not watched it, please do, because I'm gonna spoil the mess out of it, but it is so good. And Hellbound, another really good one. And y'all know I'm good and Baptist, so I have a lot to say about Hellbound. But I found it hugely entertaining. And then Spy Family, what a surprise gem for the summer. That has been a wonderful series. And wrapping up the current Agretsuko, just so much. And that's what I love about the nerd universe. It's not like we run out of material, and there's lots of people out there making content about everything. You can find whatever you want. So I was thinking, I was like, what do I want to talk about first when I come back from my little unofficial hiatus? And you know what? One of my favorite topics. Let's talk about Warhammer. Specifically, let's talk about Vulcan lives. Because he lives. And not so much Vulcan lives, but more focusing on John Grammaticus, who in the Warhammer universe, world, build of all the things, might be my favorite character. And throughout several books, and even like in the background of some plots, he's kind of the linchpin of a lot of things happening. So we're going to talk about him, we're going to talk about Vulcan, and dive a little bit deeper into the lore of Warhammer today. So before we begin, there is a concept in the world of Warhammer that you have to understand, and that is a perpetual. The Emperor of Mankind is a perpetual. The word perpetual itself means continuous motion, always moving forward. You know, one of the enigmas of science that I've really gotten into watching a lot of these sciencey videos on YouTube, because it doesn't exist, is a perpetual motion machine. A machine that generates its own energy and continues to run in perpetuity without any outside interference. The thing is, you know, laws of energy, Newton, and the rest of it. That's my scientific explanation. But in Warhammer and Warhammer 40k, there is the idea of a person or a being being perpetual, for their life to continually regenerate over and over and over again, for them to experience many lifetimes in many ways. And it's a little different than the concept of reincarnation. So again, when it comes to literature, movies, enjoyed media, you have to separate real world perceptions from the world that's being built. Like, I'm a huge fan of mythology. I love Norse mythology, Greek, Roman. I've really gotten into Japanese mythology recently and Chinese mythology. And thanks to a show I watched last night, well, not show, a movie, It's a new found footage out of China that came out. Now I'm getting a little bit deeper into Chinese mythology, and I'm just like, whoa, I need to learn some things. You have to separate mythologies from actual religious beliefs. That's the first thing. And then also, you have to examine a world in the context in which it's being written. The Warhammer universe is one where war, it's the title, war is always happening. There's always a conquest to be made. There's always a better place for humanity to be. And the Emperor of Mankind has put himself in a position where he is the guide, the leader, who's going to get humanity to whatever that next level is in his head. Not that he's told anyone else, except Malcador the Sigillite. We'll talk about him another day. He hasn't told anybody else what this next level is. Not even his cherished sons, not even the most cherished son, Horus. Hasn't talked to anyone about it. But there's a next level for humans. The concept that we have in our world, here in the human world, of reincarnation is if you build up the right kind of karma on the mortal plane, that will translate into what your next life is going to be. So, and it depends on which religion or folklore you take reincarnation from, because for some, you know, there are stages in life. You're here to learn a certain lesson, and until you learn that lesson, you're going to keep repeating till you learn the lesson. Or others, if you do the right things at the right time, you come back as a better creature version, whether that's human or the most revered animal in a society. Like in India, perhaps you come back as a cow. That is a very revered animal, a bull, a steer, symbol of strength, symbol of fertility. You could come back as a god. You could come back as a piece of nature, like a river, a tree, whatever. That's not what a perpetual is. It's not a religious idea. It's not a reincarnation idea. What the perpetuals are, meaning their singular life with their memories, when whatever their physical form is destroyed, it is simply rebuilt and they are put right back in. You know, the way I would think of it is, you know, I'm sitting in a house, the house I own and I love, by the way. But say that this house was to collapse one day and it was unlivable. But I stepped outside and some workers came in and rebuilt it from the ground up with all the same materials. And all my stuff was in here, all my nerd stuff, all my cooking stuff, everything was still here. That's kind of what a perpetual is. Same materials, just rebuilt over and over. But a perpetual is a very rare being in the universe. And we understand in Warhammer that the known universe is still the Milky Way galaxy. If you know anything about space in the real world, we'll never make it to the end of the Milky Way. Heck, you know, we're doing good to get pictures of Pluto. And our most powerful telescopes, when they take pictures of galaxies that are far away, those galaxies have stars the size of our galaxy in them. It's insane when you really dig into the vastness of outer space and what could be out there. I mean, sidebar, honestly, when people, you know, talk about aliens, is there life on other planets? I'm like, how could there not be? I mean, that's just me personally. If the universe is really as big as we think it is, and we really can't fathom how big it truly is and how many planets are out there, I mean, and this is me coming from a Judeo-Christian perspective. If I was God, I'd have tried again, because this planet was a failure. That was a horrible thing to say. But like, this didn't work out very well. I totally would have tried again. But there's just so many possibilities with even what we know about science and physics and nature and the rest of it. So that's probably something we'll never get to know, because the universe is that big. And if there were other created beings out there, I wouldn't put us next to each other. I mean, you've seen what humans do. I mean, we dislike each other because, you know, wrong height, wrong color, wrong weight, wrong gender, wrong this, wrong that. And we fight wars over it. So what would we do with beings from another planet? I mean, seriously. Okay, rant done, but bring it back. So a perpetual is a very unique being, and there's not a lot of them, but we are introduced to a few in this universe, in this world, with the Emperor being the first. But when we encounter the Emperor, we're not told that he's a perpetual when we first meet him in the early books of Warhammer, of the Horus Heresy, of Warhammer 40k, we just know he's entombed on the golden throne of Terra, and because of his massive psychic energy, everyone is able to navigate chaos, and they're able to navigate that parallel universe with safety because of his astral beacon and the psychers that are sacrificed to him daily to fuel the engine that is the Astronomicon. But no one ever really questions what this being is or where he came from. It's actually been lost in history on Terra, Earth. It's been lost in history who this person was that was the Emperor, because he's a perpetual. He's been rebuilt over and over. It's actually hinted at in several of the books in the Warhammer world that the Emperor was alive in our time. The reason it's called Warhammer and Warhammer 40k is it is taking place 30 and 40,000 years in the future. So the Emperor is a being that they think lived in our time and before, that he was around for the pyramids being built, that he saw the Grand Canyon being carved out, that he was here for the world wars, you know, that he helped the first explorers get to the top of the Himalayan mountains, which incidentally is where his palace and fortress on Terra is located. So he's not just a being of immense power, he is the most long-lived being that we know of. And in his travels, in his experiences, not just on Earth, but in other planets, other systems, he encounters one he knows is like himself. And that's John Grammaticus. So Grammaticus actually has a memory of the one time he met the Emperor. And I'm focusing on him because I'm going to talk a lot about John Grammaticus in the next books I review, because he's all up in it. He's like the thread that holds them together, and he's so cool and mysterious the way he shows up. When he started showing up in the books, when I realized that he was showing up over and over, I was like, who is this dude? And I started examining more and more the role he was playing in the greater story, and he became one of my favorite characters, just the chameleon that weaves his way in. Anywho, he recalls his one experience in encountering the Emperor, and the Emperor actually says to him, you and I see you. He went real Navi with it. I see you. We're the same. You and I are alike, meaning that he knew John Grammaticus was a perpetual. But the kicker is when that happened. It was thousands of years in the past from the current Horus Heresy that we're talking about. So John Grammaticus is potentially just as old as the Emperor and has seen just as many things. The difference where they diverge in their roles as perpetuals is how the universe chose to use them. The Emperor is the self-appointed beacon of hope for mankind, who doesn't want to be worshipped, but he wants everyone to do what he says without question. And John Grammaticus, because he's also long-lived, has had the opportunity to encounter not just all of, the things chaos has to offer, all of the things the human race has to offer, but also Xenos, the aliens. He's met aliens, and aliens have met him. And because he's such a rare specimen, he's one of those that would be in a tug of war between mankind and Xenos for use of his power as a perpetual. Because if you can just die and be reborn over and over again with all of your memories, your knowledge, your talents, everything you've built up, how valuable is that? Imagine if there was a human being alive today that collectively in their own brain had 10,000 years worth of history and information that they experienced, could tell us how to avoid certain things, could tell us how to remedy certain woes, or how the pyramids were actually built, who could tell us how in China and Korea and Japan they built temples and buildings that had no nails, arts that have been lost today. What would we know if someone had that long of a memory, and what could they predict? Because humans haven't changed. We might advance in our technology, we might advance in our thinking and our standards of living, but we still suck overall. I mean, wars still happen. I'm not going to mention the current one, but y'all know what I mean. I have this discussion with a lot of my friends, and they get rather upset with me But I just look at it, I was like, when did we start thinking that we were that civilized? We're not. We're still very primal on the inside. You have something I want and I'm going to take it. Or you're doing better than me, and I perceive that you doing as good or better than me means I have less. So let me figure out how to make your life not as awesome so I can have the security of being what I want to be. Well, somebody has to be poor, otherwise there can't be rich people. And you know what? If they are poor, it's their own darn fault. Even if they were born into poverty and born into a slum and born into a socioeconomic situation where they have zero chance of rising above, still somehow their fault. They should just make better choices and pull themselves up by the bootstraps. Okay, I'm ranting now. But that's the kind of knowledge and history of being like John Grammaticus and the Emperor would have. They would know these things. And the Emperor recognized who he was, but he didn't take advantage of John Grammaticus. He didn't use him for anything. He didn't have him become one of his ministers or advisors or anything like that. It was literally passing, but the Emperor acknowledged who he was and what he meant, which is why I think it's important to acknowledge who he is and what he meant. But John Grammaticus did end up becoming an agent to shape the future of mankind. And that ended up being on the side of the Xenos. So there's a group of Xenos called the Cabal, and I love that name, the Cabal. Look it up, it's a very cool word. But the Cabal is they're not a loose organization, but they are an organization of beings, mostly Eldar, who have looked into the future and seen that humans gonna mess up the thing. Basically, that if humans are allowed to flourish and take over the galaxy, more harm than good will come to the known universe. Gee, I can't imagine that actually being true. Us? We would destroy the known universe? From the perspective of humans, because remember, history is always written from the perspective of the winners. From the perspective of the humans, the Emperor and everyone around him, the Xenos species, Chaos, they are the enemies of man and must be destroyed. All worlds must be taken in the name of Terra so that the humans can flourish and put down anything that's not them. Boy, that ain't hitting the proverbial nail on the head. So if you're not like me, you need to die. Or become like me and serve me. I'll let you live, but you'll never get the status of me. I love Warhammer. There's just so much social commentary in it. But in the Emperor's mind, just destroy them. The Cabal is concerned not just with the future of humans, but all life in the known universe. The Elves of the Warhammer universe, here, they are the most long-lived species, the Eldar. They live on what are called craft worlds, and they are literally planets that they have built that are spaceships, but that, think Death Star times 100, and not designed to destroy planets. But they travel through space because in ancient times their home worlds have been destroyed, so they have built worlds. But the Cabal are a much older species. I'm sorry, the Eldar are a much older species than humanity. They've seen things a million years in the past, and they know what's going to happen a million years in the future. And when this blip in evolution called humans popped up, it showed up on their radar. And they said, this human thing, if they ever make it into space, we're all screwed. We have got to do something about them. And that's when they recruit a human who is entirely unique. And that is John Grammaticus. And they recruit him to achieve specific tasks that motion humanity in a direction of not destroying the universe one day. Granted, that might ultimately mean that humans go extinct at some point. But as far as everything that's not a human is concerned, humans are a virus. Humans are a bacteria, a plague upon Terra and the universe that is spreading itself. I mean, think about a virus and a bacteria. They don't intend to do harm. They really don't. Viruses exist as their own little living entity, and so do bacteria, but their job is to reproduce in the best way they can. The downside is their reproduction means something else has to give up something healthy. You know, we see sores that if bacteria gets in, it can turn into a big infection. What that is bacteria proliferating. It's doing what it was designed to do, which is live, exist, and, you know, continue its genes. That's what viruses do. They want to live, they want to exist, they find a host where they can multiply. In and of itself, they're neither good nor bad, they simply are. And the Cabal looks at humanity as not good or bad, but like a virus or bacteria. Whether humans mean good or ill, they will be the cause of destruction. Because the human's ultimate goal is just to simply exist, to proliferate, to take over, which is what the Emperor of Mankind is trying to do. He's noble in his ideas that he wants humanity united, but humanity across the galaxy united means everything else has to die. And there are so many more lives and species at stake than just what matters to the humans. There are so many more lives and cultures at stake than just the ones that matter to you. I'm not the only person on this planet. Everything can't be about my interest or the interest of my city, my state, my country. We are an entire world. And unless we cooperate on purpose, humans will always have the perspective of, for me to have, that has to not exist. We'll behave like bacteria and viruses to one another. And that's what the Cabal sees. But for a virus, there's a vaccine. For bacteria, there are antibodies. And one of those antibodies, one of those vaccines, is John Grammaticus. Grammaticus is recruited by the Cabal to be their agent against his own kind. And that sounds terrible, but because he is so long lived and has seen so much of what humans have done over thousands upon thousands of years through many lifetimes, he knows the Cabal is right. He's like, yeah, my people suck. They're terrible. You know what have I got to do? And they send him on a mission in the book Vulcan Lives. What an intro, right? They send him on a mission and Vulcan Lives to destroy a third known perpetual, and that is the Primarch Vulcan. So let's take it back a little bit to things that have happened so far. So we talked about the drop site massacre on Istvan. Horus gathered loyal forces to the Emperor on a planet for a war, and then pulled out his people, and then viral bombed the planet. To kill everything and kill all of these loyal legions and loyal soldiers to the Emperor. He didn't get them all. He got a lot of them, but he didn't get them all. And honestly, an event like that would either push you further into rebellion or push you further into loyalty. And that event kind of marked a line between the Primarchs, those that would openly support Horus in his rebellion, or those that would defend the Emperor and the throne of Terra and mankind. When that Istvan drop site massacre happened, a lot of things started going on at once. One, Rabute Gilliman, which I had to listen to the audiobook to know how to say his name, because for years I said Robot. I'm like, what kind of name is Robot? But it's Rabute. So Rabute Gilliman, the leader of the Ultramarines, the Primarch of the Ultramarines, who runs the Worlds of Ultramar, which kind of rivals the Emperor's own little thing going on, basically sets up a second base, a second Terra in Ultramar, in preparation for if this war reaches the Emperor and something awful was to happen, they could restart humanity instantly. Other things start happening. Jagatai Khan disappears. No one knows what happens to the Khan and the White Scars. They're just off in space doing whatever they want. You know, the Alpha Legion, who have always been mysterious, get more mysterious. And they're just off doing whatever it is Alfarius and Omegon and the Alpha Legion are doing. And then there are some of the Primarchs who don't care about the war and they don't care about humanity. They care about exposing the insanity that they feel within themselves that's being nurtured by chaos. and exposing that everyone else is just like them. And Vulcan, the Primarch of the Salamanders, is caught up in that. The Salamanders respond to the Isvan War, to that skirmish, and are trapped on the planet. And when that drop site massacre happens, it is assumed that Vulcan dies. But the Salamanders themselves hold to a belief that Vulcan is alive. And they're not wrong. You know, because they are born of Vulcan's gene seed, I would wager that there are some salamanders. I haven't gotten to that in the books yet, but I would wager there are some salamanders out there that might be perpetuals and don't know it. Or do know it. Because to have the genes of someone who is a perpetual put in you, one or two of them are going to pop out that way. But no one else probably except the Emperor himself and John Chromaticus, because they are fellow perpetuals and their affiliation with chaos and the rest of it, even know this is a thing. It's so mysterious that Vulcan doesn't even know he's a perpetual. He doesn't know that he can be reborn again and again. He's a Primarch. He hasn't died. He's, you know, if things go right in the world, he's not gonna die. But as a result of the Isvan massacre, Vulcan goes missing. And the Salamanders have got to find him. And this is the part where I say spoiler warning, because I'm going to talk about a couple of things as we bring this to the end. So Vulcan was captured by the nuttiest of all of the Primarchs, and that is Conrad Kurz, also referred to as the Night Haunter. So Kurz is crazy. There's no other way to say it. Kurz is crazy. And because Conrad Kurz is crazy, when the rebellion happens, he looks at it as an opportunity to let his crazy run wild. We see that reflected in the wars that we have here in the real world. If you go back to particularly events like World War I, World War II, and I just bring those up because it's probably the most familiar global event that people know about. In World War II, we have discovered that there were some things happening on certain parts of the planet that it's like, who allowed this? The experiments that were going on in the concentration camps on children and women, pregnant women, the Jews, that kind of stuff. There are, you know, generals and commanders who were captured years later who gave confession of the things that they were doing, which I can't mention here because it will ruin your day. It will ruin my day to think about it. But there's a lot that happened in those wars of things that were going on in the prisoner camps over in Asia. You know, when Japan invaded China and then tried to take down the Philippines, some of the stuff the soldiers were doing. There was stuff in in Europe that American soldiers were doing that was completely morally reprehensible. It was a war where it was basically no holds barred. If you had some crazy dumb thing that you wanted to do, apparently World War II was the theater to do that. There is something about war that wakes up the most primal part of individuals. And when you send the wrong people out to make war, they don't just make war, they make havoc. They're not just out there to fight the battle, they're out there to let their crazy flourish. And we know that's true. Respect soldiers, respect what they do, but we know that there are some who are into it because they're allowed to get away with some atrocious acts. And war is a guise to do that. Only after wars have ended and the winners, that's my dog, he's playing with a toy, and we're just going to let him. It's his house too. But because they have the covering of I was only doing what I was ordered, or I was only doing what was best for my my people, I was only doing what I thought was going to advance the cause, then they're allowed to get away with a lot of things. The key to that is once the war is over and everybody goes back and examines what had happened and realizes that that was not good, then there's punishment. But Conrad Kurz is in a unique position because he's a Primarch. Only other Primarchs or the Emperor could physically challenge him. And because he's called the Night Haunter, remember that. The names in this series kind of tell you what the characters are. Night Haunter, Fabius Bile. His last name is Bile. You didn't know he was a villain anyway. But the Night Haunter was always disturbed. In some of the books, when they go back in the past to the legions before they turn to chaos and whatnot, you get a peek into what these different Primarchs were before they became infected with chaos. And those seeds were always in there, but they didn't have an outlet for it because they would be punished. That's not what the Emperor wanted. You know, hey, I'm living a good life, I'm a Primarch, things are good. But when they got the opportunity, because of the war, because of Horus's rebellion, that crazy got let out the gate. And they let it out hard. And Kurz actually abducts Vulcan from Isfahan and traps him on a ship that was built by Perturabo for him. If you don't know who Perturabo is, yet another one of our Primarchs, Perturabo has a skill of building, but not just building. He can build massive structures, mages, amphitheaters. There's other Primarchs who have solicited his duties before, but he's a master builder. His people are master builders. His legion are master builders. And for Kurz, sometime in the past, they built him a ship that's basically impossible to escape. Didn't question why he wanted it. And it turned out Kurz was, using it as his, own saw chamber, basically. Kurz figures out that Vulcan is a perpetual and is determined to kill him. But he kills him over and over and over again. And Vulcan doesn't know what's going on initially. He doesn't know that he is coming back as a perpetual and being reborn. So Kurz will burn him alive, and then Vulcan wakes up on some other part of this maze ship. He'll jettison him out into space where he can't breathe. He'll suffocate. Boom, he's back alive on some other part of the ship. He'll stick him with 1,000 needles until he dies from the agony. And boom, he wakes up somewhere else. And he knows what he's doing to his brother Primarch. He knows exactly what he's doing. But what he's trying to do is break down Vulcan's will to prove to Vulcan that they're the same. Because Vulcan is one of those Primarchs like Rabute Gilliman or Sanguinius the Angel, who are so loyal to the Emperor that their purity is almost unbelievable. It's like nobody can be this loyal to the cause. And he wants to prove to Vulcan that you aren't as good as you think you are. I can break you down enough to where you become like me. But the good thing is Vulcan never goes there. Eventually Vulcan does figure out what's going on, that he's being reborn over and over. He doesn't lose his humanity, but he does eventually lose his sanity. And re-enter John Grammaticus into the story. So the Cabal know what Vulcan is. That's a dangerous gene seed. Remember, the way the legions are created is they have the genetics of their gene father, their Primarch, put into them in order to create the legion. So they are more loyal to their Primarch, and they're like their Primarch. They are of one mind. It's like ants. It's like a queen ant. They make all the babies, and they all follow what the queen wants. My thing just said I've reached my max file size recording. Interesting. But because of that, it kind of can sway where the loyalties of the legions lie. Are the legionnaires more loyal? Are the Space Marines, Legiones Astartes, are they more loyal to the Emperor, or are they more loyal to their Primarch? In the case of the Salamanders, they give up on the war and go searching for their Primarch. They don't know that Kurz has him, but that's all they care about, is we're going to find Vulcan. But the Cabal knows what Vulcan is. And I would wager the Emperor does as well and just never told anyone. But because that's another perpetual, that's another anomaly in this chain called the thread of humanity that could lead to something devastating. If the gene seed of Vulcan proliferates too much, you cannot have tens of thousands, potentially, of Legiones Astartes, genetically modified humans, who are also perpetuals running around the universe. Because right now, no one but the Emperor and John Grammaticus and the Cabal know that Vulcan's a perpetual. Vulcan doesn't know he's a perpetual. And in the books, they never outright say that that's why the Cabal sends John Grammaticus to kill Vulcan. They never say that. They're like, you just got to kill him. And everyone's like, why? Because you have to. I think that's the reason. Because there probably already are some space marines who are perpetuals by accident. But if the apothecaries were to discover intentionally what he is, then they could on purpose, not just in the salamanders, but in all of the legiones Astartes, basically make an immortal force of warriors that can't be beaten. That's a scary thought. So the Cabal says, hey, perpetual to perpetual, we need you to go after Vulcan. And there's a special item that will let you do that. It's called a let me see if I can say it right. Fulgurite. I'm not saying that again. Lightning in a rock. The Emperor's psychic lightning trapped in stone, basically. It would take a being like the Emperor or another Primarch to kill a Primarch. And the power, the psychic power of the Emperor has been trapped in stone. And with that artifact, Grammaticus can kill Vulcan. And this is where Grammaticus has his first crisis of conscience with working with the Cabal, because Vulcan is one of the innocent Primarchs. He's not crazy. He's only ever done the right thing. He has a loyal legion. He has fought upright and honest conflicts. He seeks to do the right thing. Grammaticus doesn't understand why the Cabal wants this Primarch gone. But he's going to follow his orders. Because the Cabal own him at this point. It's been thousands of years. Things aren't changing. But Grammaticus is going to follow his orders. And he learns what's happened to Vulcan. How Kurz is torturing him over and over and over. He knows that to go through something like that is going to break his mind and spirit. And what Grammaticus has been tasked with doing is not going to help matters. And he comes to a crisis of conscience. And once we understand in the book Vulcan Lives that he actually does live, once we understand what Kurz has done, the Emperor's intentions, and where the Cabal wants to direct humanity, that changes the course of the Horus Heresy. So that's all of the book I'm going to talk about. I need you to go read it. Please like, comment, subscribe, and go read the book. It's a really good one. But it sets us up. For me, Vulcan Lives is the turning point of the Horus Heresy. This is where things change. The introduction of John Grammaticus, the understanding of what this type of being means in the universe and how it can change things, it makes you look at the rest of the Primarchs and the rest of the war very differently. Before Vulcan Lives came out, there was kind of a lull in the action with the Horus Heresy series. And then once they brought this character in and all of his trials and the things he's seen in his past, connection to the Emperor, it changed things for the best. So, highly recommend it. Go out there, have it a read. Again, like, comment, subscribe, and down below, tell me what you think about this video, and it is good to be back.